I've seen it elsewhere. What Paul Mangwana is talking about, that members of parliament, government officials, they will use their official vehicles to campaign. But where I disagree with him is that they then use state resources like the freebies that they give to rural communities. Let me just explain the patronage system, how it works and how they abuse this system, ZANU-PF. They have in a village what we call the village coordinating person, the VTICO, who registers people to benefit from these freebies whenever they are being given. So each person in the village registers with the secretary every Wednesday from January to December, because on Wednesdays in Zimbabwe they respect this religious thing that you don't go to the fields, so they will always meet under the tree. If you do not show up in a ZANU-PF meeting from January, say, to June, and in June there are freebies that are being distributed, your sugar or something, if your name is not on the list, you will not receive. So villagers are therefore forced to attend those meetings for them so that whenever these freebies are available, they then benefit. So for you, therefore, to be registered, you must be a card-carrying member of ZANU-PF. This is how ZANU-PF organizes its structures in rural communities through the traditional leadership. And you attract them by giving them these freebies. So this is the advantage that ZANU-PF then he has in terms of also abusing state resources.
Well, since you came back from Zimbabwe, when you were there, what has been your impression regarding election coverage of the media, both radio, television, and newspapers? Because at the moment, the sense we are getting from the MDC is that they did not get appropriate or balanced coverage.
The majority of the working people in the cities, they are now on a satellite dish. You go to Bulawayo, a number of homes will have access to SABC. Your news channel is being largely watched in Zimbabwe. Yes, there are those that do not have access to this channel. They are then subjected to ZANU-PF propaganda, because ZTV is a ZANU-PF station. Then the rural flock will then have an advantage. There's what is called the Studio 7, which broadcasts from Washington, that broadcasts in rural communities, which normally carries the opposition message to rural communities, because your radio, state radio in Zimbabwe, does not feature much of the opposition. So the majority of the people in Zimbabwe largely depend on radio for news information. So Studio 7 then it comes in handy to broadcast in the evening, and then ZANU-PF uses a state media. So definitely the opposition is being excluded in the state media.
Let's turn our focus now to people in the diaspora. Are the Zimbabweans who did not get a chance to come back home to vote, would they be interested to come back home? And secondly, really after these elections, what does this era represent for them?
Well, the contesting parties in Zimbabwe, they did not invest much in the diaspora in terms of mobilizing the diaspora community. Unlike in 2000 and 2002, you will recall that in 2002, on the voting weekend, more people traveled to Zimbabwe, but this past weekend, very few did travel to Zimbabwe. So we will blame firstly on the poor organization by the opposition parties themselves to organize the diaspora community. But secondly, we have been campaigning for a diaspora vote, which is being rejected. So it then becomes difficult for the people in the diaspora to go and cast their vote. And thirdly, when the voter registration happened in Zimbabwe between September to about February, the mobile voter registration, it was during the time that also from October here, Zimbabweans were applying to renew their special permits offered by the Department of Home Affairs. So someone applying for a special permit, then you have to calculate, should I then go across, or should I then wait, apply for my permit, then travel to Zimbabwe? So the application of these permits was then, it became a distraction that people then did not take seriously the issue of voter registration. But finally on that, when the voting registration started, none of us in September or October knew that by this time or this election, Nelson Chamisa and Mnangagwa were going to be presidential candidates, because you still had Mugabe at the time, you still had Morgan Tsvangirai, and the people thought that an election between Mugabe and Morgan Tsvangirai, it is going to be rigged. So there was no excitement from the diaspora community. When the excitement came, when Chamisa took over, mobile registration was now closed.
All right, we will continue with our discussion. Let's invite our viewers so that they can comment on the elections in Zimbabwe. All right, the number will be appearing on your screen that you can be able to call. But at the moment, let's also touch on the issue of who may win the elections. I mean, like, look at the balance. It's not a foregone conclusion that Mr. Mnangagwa will retain power, and also it's not a foregone conclusion either that Mr. Chamisa will win the elections. So whoever wins, what is it like that you think they should do going forward? I mean, like, the first thing that they have to do once they get in office.
Well, when you look into their manifestos, they are not different. Their economic policies, they are not different. They all speak to foreign direct investment. They all seek to restore the relationship with the international community. ZANU-PF has already made application to join the Commonwealth. The MTC Alliance speaks of joining the Commonwealth as well. The MTC Alliance then goes further to say they need to attract agricultural experts from Israel to come to Zimbabwe and assist in the agricultural sector, to an extent that they want, if Chamisa wins, you will not be surprised to have an Israel embassy in Zimbabwe. So their economic policies are not different. They are all advancing a neoliberal agenda. You will also know that ZANU-PF is now restoring its relationship with the Conservative Party in Britain. As the MTC Alliance went to this election, it didn't have the traditional funding that it received, particularly from the British.
All right, hold on, then we're going to have to take a caller now who's on the line. Sanodi, welcome. All right, we have Cornelius who is calling us in Zim. Cornelius, welcome.
Yes, I just want to comment on the situation in Zimbabwe.
Go ahead. Nicholas, go ahead.
Yes, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yes, I've been following up on these elections, and a lot of people are hearing they celebrating that Chamisa has won, and it's all this rumors circulating on the social media, and which is not true. And by so doing, it causes a problem in our country, because at the end of the day, if MDC doesn't win, then what's going to happen? Then it's going to be a problem. And the thing that people don't know at the moment is, some of them, they don't know, is Chamisa has been promising a lot of things, of which he has been saying that he can, if he wins the elections, within a week, the country will be going back to normal. That won't happen. Zimbabwe needs about 5 years to go back to normal.
All right. Thank you very much for that insight. Actually, we saw even on Twitter that many people have been circulating fake news that the results have been published. What's your view on that?
Well, you'll know that after the polling stations closed at 7, counting started and the results were posted outside. So the results that you could access were the results in the urban center. So this is why we were bombarded with these fake news. The results are now coming in from rural areas. As I was coming in, there seemed to be some kind of quietness from those that have been feeding us heavily these results, fake news results. But the point we should understand is that the MTC generally, even though it has diverted from its mandate as a part of the working class, it was formed by the working class in Zimbabwe. The working class still have faith in it. The working class voted for the MTC Alliance in this election. ZANU-PF still retains its support in the rural base. It has been relegated to a rural political party. But the point is, the rural populace in Zimbabwe is higher than the urbanites. So this is why it is then getting this support that is receiving, using patronage and so forth in rural communities.
All right. We have Jacob from Boxburg. Jacob?
Hey, how are you?
I'm okay. Please go ahead.
Thank you, man. You see, I had a caller who was on the line just now regarding the issue of Chamisa promises and stuff. What I need to comment is the elections in Zimbabwe are very volatile and dynamic. And I think what Chamisa and BIT are doing is just trying to contain the situation and guard against rigging. In terms of what actually is happening and how somebody will know that they have won the election or not, there's a comment that Mnangagwa made, if you follow his Twitter, to say there are signs that they are already winning. Also, Chamisa made the same necessary, the same comments about winning resoundingly. But what I would want to say is, right now, ZEC, which is the body trusted with announcing the results, is taking a long time to come just address the people regarding the results. You see, elections, you don't need to create impatience, guesswork and stuff. Most of the urban voting centers have been closed, results collated and stuff. If ZEC needs credibility, it needs to start doing the necessary international standards that would be recommended.
Let me ask you this. What do you make out of the confidence and enthusiasm from Nelson Chamisa that he has won the election? I mean, don't you think he should rather wait for the results to be announced and hold his horses?
Your question is very, very... Yeah, your question is very important, and you put it across very, 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 what can I say, clearly. But what I would say is that for South Africa, Julius Malema or Mus Maimane can wait for elections and wait for the results because there is that IEC. You see, there's a difference between IEC and ZEC. If with ZEC, you are quiet and you don't do parallel, collating of the numbers, they will dupe you. Because right now, what Chamisa did, I think, which is right for any other contesting member, is to collect parallel to the system. They have got agents on almost every polling station, so they know whether the results they have won or they didn't win. They didn't win the elections.
All right, let's leave it there. All right, thank you very much, Jacob from Boxback. We have Lexi from Cape Town. Welcome, Lexi.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I would like to talk about the results of the election, apparently.
Yes, please go ahead.
So my thinking is, okay, there are certain things that have been said surrounding the election, the coverage and all, but I think it all comes down to the result now. I think a lot of people have a lot of opinions and perspectives when it comes to the results. But my biggest question is why does it take so long for the results to come out in a very small country like Zimbabwe? Like to add up all those votes, it's something that can take a day or less. Why then are they saying the final election results are going to come in on Saturday?
But on the other hand, Lex, you must remember that if you have an election now and release the results now, you would be having other people coming from other quarters of the opposition or other political parties saying that the results could have been rigged, or they could have just made an announcement with an impression that the other parties did not get enough votes.
No, but then as it stands now, I think this delay and everything, just like now, I'm one of those people who is waiting to hear the ZEC chairperson announcing the results. And apparently she had said 3 o'clock. Now it's like 3:30. She's not there. She's not saying anything. So that I think it builds something very negative from the people to think of what is going on, considering the history that the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission that they have when it comes to the handling of elections. I think that raised a very negative, a very negative impact.
Lexi, we'll hear from Peter about what you are calling a delay. And on the other hand, we must remember that it is the prerogative of the ZEC to decide on their checking again and rechecking the results to make an announcement. If they're not ready now, what gives us the legitimate right to accuse them of creating suspicions regarding announcing the result, not at 3 o'clock as they had announced? But we'll cross live to Peter in a jiffy. Let me get your comment on that.
You see, those that contested the elections yesterday, candidates, your council, your MP candidates, they now know the results. Those that have won, they know that they've won. Those that have lost, if you check on social media, they're already congratulating their competitors to say, I did my best, but I lost. Congratulations to you. So the delay in announcing results, which candidates themselves now know, feed into the theory that there's an attempt to rig the elections. So while we understand that ZEC has to announce the results by the 4th, or the latest by the 4th of August, I think they have to understand the conditions. In the advent of social media, it makes it easier for people to transmit the results. So they needed to announce the results as soon as possible.
Right, let's take another caller from Tembisa. We've got Nyasha. Good afternoon and welcome, Nessa.
Thank you. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you. Please go ahead.
Yes, I would like to comment on the situation in Zimbabwe. Hello?
Okay, please go ahead.
Yes.
We're listening, Nessa.
The elections. A lot of people died. So right now, the way they are doing things, it's more like they're creating that scene that happened in 2008. And if you check, Nelson Chamisa has been in MDC for a very long time. So you can be confident to say, you know what, I'm going to win, because he's got a lot of youth. And 75% population in Zimbabwe are youth. So why wouldn't we be confident about it?
A very interesting view about this confidence that we talked about from Nelson Chamisa.
But we know Nelson Chamisa, what he said when he cast his vote. He said he was there just to confirm that they've won. So he's keeping that line. He's trying to rally his supporters to say, this is the victory, we've won this thing. This is the same message that he has been saying in his rallies, that they've already won. But look, numbers should be giving us to say, has Nelson Chamisa won the elections or not? But one thing about this campaign, Nelson Chamisa did pull the crowd. But the biggest challenge in his campaign is that while he was pulling the crowd, he did not have sufficient foot soldiers who were doing door-to-door campaign in communities. That might be a challenge to him, particularly in rural areas, because most of his campaign team, they will not necessarily reside in those rural communities. They will be driving from urban centers to go to rural areas to campaign.
Let's take a look as we cross live back to Zimbabwe to see if there is any activity at the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission Center, where Peter is. You can see for yourself, the seats are still empty. The microphones have been rigged there, and the media is ready to cover the announcement. And this delay, I am actually skeptical about creating an impression that there could be an attempt to rig the election just because the officials have not arrived at the press conference. But be that as it may, let's take Bongani from Pretoria. Bongani, welcome.
Thank you for having me right here.
All right, please go ahead.
I would like to also comment saying that the idea of bringing the results late is instilling a lot of insecurity in most of us that are abroad. And to be quite frank with you, I'm sure you can even realize that most of the people that are on social media are the ones that are abroad, because in Zimbabwe currently, the availability of Wi-Fi and free internet is not that fair like how it is in other countries. And for the ZANU-PF or maybe the ZEC itself to give us the idea that they are rigging, it's very unfortunate, because it's not by will that all of us we are in where we are in the United States, in South Africa and Botswana. It's all because of situations that we were pushed, because people were being beaten up, even though you can even see the current presidential candidate for MDC Alliance. He was beaten up and he survived, and he's still leading us to victory.
I understand you, Bongani. Bongani, I understand you very well. But at the moment, if the elections have been without any incident, what creates that fear or suspicion in you that there could be an attempt to rig the elections? Right now, don't you think that the ZEC has been able to conduct this election very, very professionally? And if there could be a delay in terms of perhaps how the votes have been counted, and they have not actually gotten and collated the data the way they want to, and they don't want to make a premature announcement, what do you think about that flip side of the view?
Well, I think I'm going to give ZEC credit now, since it failed even to uphold most of the questions that each and every institution was requiring it to provide information about the voters' roll, about all the polling stations, if there are enough people that are going to be monitoring the elections. So there's no credit at all that I have to give ZEC. And there's all these tactics that we've been seeing for the past decades of elections that we've been conducting. And even though they're going to take for granted the number of people that have came out, it's not going to be easy for them to rig these elections. And we're going to make sure that even if they're going to rig the election, there's going to be a runoff, whatever that's going to happen. And there's definitely no credit for ZEC at all, and ZANU-PF itself.
All right. Thank you very much, Bongani. And we're going to take another caller from Kempton Park. It's Grace. Grace, welcome. Please talk to us. Grace, you are live on air.
Okay, thanks for having me.
Yes, please go ahead.
I wanted to comment towards what people are saying about Chamisa declaring that he has won the elections. He has the right to do so because MDC had won this election long back before they had the joint government.
Okay, I guess she made a point, very important bonda, so to say. Now, let's go back to the issue that we were discussing about Zimbabweans in the diaspora, because many of them are watching and would want to be calling back now. And the question that I asked you earlier, it was about this homecoming time for them and how they can contribute towards the restoration on Zimbabwe, and also what's in it for them. What's your perspective regarding that?
Well, you have Zimbabweans that have gained experience here in South Africa and elsewhere, who are running companies, who, in our view, if a situation normalizes, they need to go back to Zimbabwe. Government must step into this skill. You have Zimbabweans that are skilled, like your teachers, nurses, who are now no longer practicing their profession because of the documentation challenges, who are now doing odd jobs, who, in our view, think it should be mobilized to go back to Zimbabwe and contribute to the development of the Zimbabwean economy. But the people will simply say, we were not asked to leave the country, therefore government should not ask us to go back. What it has to do is to create a conducive environment for the people to return. I believe that if a conducive environment is created in Zimbabwe, there is confidence in the banking sector, jobs are created, quite a number of Zimbabweans will want to return to Zimbabwe. But there are those that have already settled in the countries where they are. They have children that are going to school. Some of them will find it difficult to pull off their children from the schools where they are to go back to Zimbabwe. So you always have those challenges.
Well, I mean, like after the elections have been announced, it doesn't mean that there's going to be a conducive environment overnight.
It will take about 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. Now, given that, do you think that Zimbabwe will be ready to welcome those skilled and experienced Zimbabweans who have been in the diaspora?
This is what a new government ought to do. As the communists ourselves, we have called for a national economic dialogue that should involve the diasporans. Because when you talk of reviving the economy, you are talking about capital. Some of these Zimbabweans have access to capital, and we believe that they can contribute their capital in rebuilding the economy, opening up some industries in Zimbabwe. You will know that last year in December, President Mnangagwa did call a meeting at the Zimbabwean embassy. It was packed because the Zimbabweans wanted to hear about the projects that are available where they can invest. But the complaint that we then heard from the people that attended was that President Emmerson Mnangagwa was speaking about the mega deals, which a lot of people who are your small, medium business people could not afford. So there must be a look into the small scale business people who can go back to Zimbabwe and contribute.
All right. Thank you very much. Hold on to that thought and we will continue with our discussion. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, our rolling coverage on the Zimbabwe elections and, of course, the results counting continues after the break. Stay with us.